It's yet another adventure with hiddenincatours.com, and this time we're in England. In a previous video, we did quite an extensive tour of Stonehenge with local expert Maria Wheatley, and she gave us lots of insights into the actual history of this large monument. Conventional academics state that construction began around 2500 BC, but Maria said that there are some radiocarbon samples that were tested dating it at 12,000 years old. We also visited Woodhenge. Unfortunately, all the wood, of course, is rotted away. These are concrete small pillars that have been put up to show where the original markers were. And again, Woodhenge seems to be the same as Stonehenge at being initially constructed around 12,000 years ago, or 10,000 BC. So today we're visiting the massive complex of Avebury, where there are many huge standing stones, one of which weighs up to 100 tons. Unfortunately, this site was used as a quarry over the course of time, and so many of the large stones were broken up and used in the construction of walls and buildings, which is very sad, but luckily for us, some of the large stones still exist, and we can see that at one time there was a large perimeter trench going around the entire site. Again, this monument of Avebury is one of the largest megalithic sites on Earth in terms of sheer volume. And here we're walking up to one of the sarsen stones. The quarry is somewhere between 1 and 3 miles away, and Maria is pointing out that this one is a female stone because it is broader at the top than the bottom. The male stones, of course, are the opposite. They are narrow at the top and wider at the bottom. And now we're seeing one of the large stones where large pieces have been broken off, again for construction of walls, etc. But it's a very fine stone, probably quartzite in nature, so therefore having a hardness around 7 out of 10 on the Mohs scale. Very, very fine composition. And Avebury is so large that we had to walk through different corridors like this one in order to see the entire complex. Again, this gives you a sense of scale. And coming up, Maria is going to do some actual talking, which is great. Unfortunately, the quality of the sound is not superior because the wind was blowing somewhere between 30 and 50 miles an hour on the day that we were there. But Maria's insights are very, very important as regards this ancient site in England.
Where these grow, the soil is absolutely unbelievable.
Ah.
I don't know, I've shown you this actually, Basti, because you haven't been on sort of Avery tour with me for a while. If we kind of go over here and you look at the stone at this angle, you can see like a face profile.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you look really carefully at this face profile, I think it was all highly polished sarsen, because come and have a look at this. That's very smooth, polished off sarsen.
Oh, yeah.
Feel it. So I think the whole of the face was polished off. That's how smooth Stonehenge would have been.
Oh, really?
That's polished sarsen.
As part of the giant complex, we're also going to be visiting Silbury Hill later on in the video. And it's also very complex as regards history. But as we continue to walk through the Avebury complex, again, you see the sense of scale of some of these stones. They're not as beautifully shaped and polished as sites perhaps in Peru, Bolivia, and Egypt, but it's the sense of scale and the complexity of the whole area that is very fascinating. Here we're approaching Silbury Hill, and you can see that it's clearly a man-made structure with a complex history.
Marsden and Marden was a super huge complex in between Stonehenge and Avebury. And Den is an Old English word for settler, and that means the settlement of Mars. Okay. Now I showed that to Rodney Hale, who I was mentioning earlier, that's worked with Andrew Collins, and we noticed that if you use Silbury Hill for Earth, and then you go to Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and so on, they're using the mean distance in the heavens of where Earth is to a planet.
So that's really quite intriguing. What Maria is saying is that the ancient megalithic structures in England, especially around the area of the Salisbury Plain, seem to have alignments related to the different planets in our solar system. And this is also spoken about by author Andrew Collins. So Silbury Hill may very well have originally been a pyramidal shape, or at least a step pyramid type shape, and was altered over the course of time. The exterior originally was probably raw white chalk, so it would have shone like a beacon. Now, of course, it's covered in grass, but that's what it presently looks like, not necessarily the way it looked at different stages in the past. Again, it's probably many, many thousands of years old and was altered over the course of time by different cultures. And so finally, we're going to West Kennet Long Barrow. And this is a burial place. And according to Maria, it was the burial place of people who had elongated heads, most likely the result of cranial deformation. And they lived up to, once again, about 12,000 years ago, and were taken over by what are called the Beaker people, who were an invading people that came from Europe, probably 2500 BC or somewhat earlier. But let's let Maria tell the whole story.
Neolithic, the long skull period. This was open and aligned to face the full moon in the east and the spring and autumn equinox sunrise. Okay. Now they used the chambers for probably initiation, rituals, ceremony, not for death. Okay. And then when it came to their final demise, and the long skull people were attacked, many murdered around Stonehenge, there was a decommissioning phase of the Neolithic. What do I mean by that, the decommissioning phase? What they did, the round skull people, the Beaker culture, they got dirt, and they got everything associated with that civilization, put their skulls and their long bones inside, infilled this with dirt, massive blocking stone here. Put the skulls in, massive blocking stone, and did that throughout this. And then, in the style of Indiana Jones, they got this blocking stone and sealed the tombs for all time.
Wow.
I know, it's archaeologists don't talk about that fact. In fact, I'm the only Earth Mysteries person that ever pointed that out. This is the long lost, forgotten history of the early Neolithic civilization.
So when would this have taken place, where the round skull people took over? And
well, Brian, it's that date everybody bangs on about, 2500 BC. I actually think it was a lot earlier than that. Yeah, but that's the archaeological date given through some shards that they found in there. And it wasn't until the 1950s that they realised there was these chambers here, because it was so infilled with dirt, so jam-packed, that the archaeological team had to hire huge diggers to get all of it out. But that didn't just happen in this area, that happened throughout the British Isles. So it was a phase where let's forget about the past, let's forget about these people even existed, and we'll start building our own culture. So they added to the monuments that the long skull people had already erected, is my theory. And it's archaeologically correct.
so these are the Celts who moved in? And
No, the Beaker people.
Beaker
The Beaker people were going across Europe probably from pockets in Russia, the steppes there, and they were moving across Europe with a culture called the Beaker culture, which was urn burials in beakers.
Mm-hmm.
They were a lot taller than the ancient Britons, and they were fairer in skin and colour, and they came and either brought disease here, killed a lot of people. There was a crisis point in the Neolithic, and no other Neolithic monument was ever built after 2500 BC.
Oh, wow.
So it's, which I point out in my little book. I mean, I'm writing a bigger book on Stonehenge and the Long Skull people, but I point that out. I'll give you a couple of copies of that, which I've got, that describe all of this and the decommissioning of their monuments. I mean, Stonehenge was twice as violent.
Mm-hmm.
They really put more rubble in, so packed, and started to destroy the frontispieces. They didn't just get the block and stone and neatly put it in. And some of the skulls were really in a bad state in Stonehenge because they'd been crushed with the weight of the decommissioning phase.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the actual chambers, and you get this throughout Ireland and the British Isles. The top stone here always has this kind of rubble effect. You find that in Ireland, you even find it in some parts of Sardinia, actually, and Malta. So that's a very Neolithic feature. And same in this one here. I mean, obviously that's more concrete from Atkinson's time. And you have that there. So these were the chambers, but the far chamber, which now you've got two smaller chambers there. That's a block and stone there, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the far chamber, but originally it was what's called corbelled roofing, and that's where you get a dome effect. Like at Newgrange, Maze Howe in Orkney. So Lord in Corbel, dry stone, Corbel effect coming up, and that in itself generates a particular type of energy.
So what Maria is showing us is the fine polish that places like Stonehenge once had, and you can learn a lot more about these sites from her.